Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over 10 college football games for Week 6, Saturday, October 7th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your football picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Saturday in college football. First up, we see LSU and Missouri. This one, 12 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. LSU is a favorite here on the road. We see a pretty steep total in this game. And LSU's coming off a loss to Ole Miss. It was a tough loss for the Tigers, but a really entertaining game for us college football fans. It was 55-49 the final score. If you like offense, you enjoyed that game. But still, tough loss for LSU. On the other side, Missouri took care of business against Vanderbilt, won that game, covered the spread on the road 38-21. The question for me in this game is, can Missouri keep up offensively? LSU has glaring issues defensively right now, giving up, last week 700 yards to Ole Miss, but the offense is the real deal. I mean, this team's scoring 44 points per game, over 550 yards per game, 5.5 yards per carry on the ground. Daniels is throwing for 73% completion against some tough defenses and over 350 yards per game. The offensive line's held up really well. Could be a top 3 offense in college football this year, honestly. The defensive issues aside, LSU's going to be able to score a lot of points in this game. Can Missouri keep up? I just don't know. I mean, Missouri's played a decent schedule in terms of the strength schedule. Kansas State, Memphis, at Vanderbilt, but to me, they haven't faced anything close to this LSU team. And Missouri also, even though Brady Cook in the offense has been solid, I don't see the explosive playability for this team. They're only running the ball at 4 yards per carry, so it's been more of a one-dimensional offense. The offensive line play has been fine, but do I trust Brady Cook to get into a shootout with Jaden Daniels? I just don't. I think we're going to see a one-sided game and a game where LSU pulls away late. To me, that's why I like the under in this one, because we see a really steep total. And while I do think LSU's going to score a lot of points, I don't think Missouri keeps up. So give me LSU and the under in this one. Next up, another early game, this one between Maryland and Ohio State. This one's going to be 12 o'clock Eastern on Fox. We see Ohio State as a big favorite, and I say for good reason, despite Maryland being 5-0. In this series, Maryland's 0-8 all time, and Ohio State's 5-3 against the number in those games. The home team 5-0 against the spread the last 5, and you look at Maryland, like I said, 5-0, 2-0 in Big Ten play, but you look at the strength of schedule. They open the season with Towson, an FCS opponent. Then you play one of the weaker FBS teams in Charlotte, one of the weaker FBS teams in Virginia in the ACC, and then you play 2 of the weaker teams in the Big Ten in Indiana and Michigan State. Your only road game of the season against Michigan State, who was dealing with that coaching debacle with Mel Tucker, during that week. So to me, now you're going on the road against a rested Ohio State team and had a bye week and is coming off its last game against Notre Dame on the road, beating the Irish by 3 points. The offense was fine. The defense was stellar, and it's been a strong defensive showing from Ohio State to start the year. I don't think enough is talked about that Western Kentucky game where that's a Hilltoppers team. It's one of the best offenses in mid-major college football in the Conference USA, and they only put up 10 points in that game. Western Kentucky's scoring well over that per game this season. So this Ohio State team, very good defensively. The offense will get better as the season goes along. I think it's more than good enough here to win this game and cover the number. Give me Ohio State laying the points. Next up, we see Marshall and NC State. This one's going to be 2 o'clock Eastern on the CW Network, one of the only non-conference games on the board for Week 6. Now, NC State, in my opinion, has not been very impressive this year, especially on the offensive side of things. And we saw this team fail to cover at the beginning of the year against UConn as a 2-touchdown favorite. Got blown out by Notre Dame. They barely won outright against UVA as a more than touchdown favorite. And we saw them only score 10 points with only 201 total yards and 9 first downs against Louisville last week at home. The offense is not doing enough, and I wouldn't want to lay this many points against Marshall, a team that's perfect on the season, 4-0, has beaten an ACC school this year, and we saw in Virginia Tech, and has pulled off some nice upsets in years prior. And it's been solid, pretty balanced on both sides of the ball. Really good offensive line play from Marshall. Only 2 sacks allowed this season. It's only 1.6% of passing plays have ended in a sack for Marshall, with over 70% completion. Running the ball well. The defense has been solid, especially in the secondary. I have not liked what I've seen from Brennan Armstrong, the transfer from UVA, and I think he's going to have a lot of pressure on him this year as Marshall forces a lot of sacks. We saw 7 from him in the beginning of the year against Albany. I'm going to take Marshall in the points. I could see this as another upset here for Marshall against another Power 5 school. Next up, it's Virginia Tech and Florida State. This one, 3:30 Eastern. It's going to be on ABC. Now, Florida State a few weeks ago had a scare at Boston College where they were over a 3-touchdown favorite in that game and only won by the score of 31-29, and Florida State was outgained by over 100 yards in that game. The next week, another road game against Clemson. Florida State was a 2.5-point favorite. They won that game by 7, but it needed overtime to grab that W, 31-24. But now Florida State's had a bye week. They're rested. They get to go back to Tallahassee, regroup, and I think they're facing one of the weaker teams in the ACC, especially when you put them on the road in Virginia Tech. This is a solid home team. We saw the nice home wins already this year against Old Dominion in a blowout win at the beginning of the season, and last week against Pittsburgh, another blowout win, 38-21. But we've seen his team, when you put them on the road, they're just not the same team really on either side of the ball. Last year, that was the case where they scored 3 points per game fewer, gave up 9 more points per game on the road. And this season, the 2 road games for Virginia Tech against Rutgers and Marshall, they lost outright to Marshall, which you don't usually see ACC schools doing. And they lost to Rutgers 35-16 the final. Didn't cover in either of those games, obviously. So now you're going to Florida State, a top 5 team in the country, in my opinion. I think this team bounces back offensively, get a little bit healthier, dealing with some injuries. They get the bye week to, rest up. This team should be able to put together a feel-good blowout win at home in front of the home crowd. Give me Florida State laying the points. Next up, we see Arkansas State and Troy. This one, 4 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be on ESPN+. Now, this Arkansas State team looks like a brand new team with Jalen Rayner at quarterback. And, we've seen back-to-back really strong offensive showings from Arkansas State. 44 points in a win against Southern Miss, and then 52 points against UMass last week on the road, 52-28 victory. However, now the second straight road game for Arkansas State. This is a conference matchup against Troy, and a very tough Troy defense. I think the best defense in the Sun Belt. And we saw Troy play a similar quarterback in Jalen Rayner to last week in Darren Granger for Georgia State, a dual threat that's second in the team in rushing, just like Rayner is for Arkansas State. And Troy's defense had no issues in that one, even on the road, where they only gave up 298 total yards to Georgia State, who was really scoring a ton of points going into that game. And Troy won that one easily, 28-7, the final score, outgaining them by over 100 yards. This Troy offense is getting better week by week. Watson's looking really sharp in the passing game. The run game's starting to get going as well with Vidal. It's just a really tough spot for Arkansas State. I think we see a blowout from Troy. Give me the Troy Trojans laying the points. Next up, we see Notre Dame and Louisville. This one's going to be a 7:30 Eastern start time on ABC, so following up that Florida State-Virginia Tech game on ABC. And we're going to see Louisville as a home underdog in this game, and Notre Dame has played in a lot of exciting games recently. Could be considered a letdown spot here as Notre Dame lost to Ohio State in a close one, 17-14, really disappointing result for the Irish, but then a really exciting finish for Notre Dame as they were down 14-13 at Duke in the final possession of the game. They had a 4th and 16. They were out of field goal range, so they had to go for it. Somehow Sam Hartman found the first down, and it looked like Notre Dame was just going to chew the clock, kick the game-winning field goal, but no. Esteem found a 20, 30-yard run in that one to find the touchdown. And Notre Dame went for 2-point conversion to try to make it a 7-point game. They got it. They covered the spread somehow. It was a bad beat if you had Duke plus the 5.5 plus 6 points in that one. But, this could be considered a letdown spot, and we've seen Notre Dame playing a lot of close games. Louisville, no stranger to close games as well. Last week, 13-10 final score against NC State on the road. But this Louisville team, 5-0 to start the year, really balanced team. Similar to a team like Marshall, like I mentioned, solid on offense. The offensive line's been pretty good. They're running the ball over 5 yards per carry. The passing game's been solid. Really good against the run. That's what's important against Notre Dame, who likes to run the football quite often. They like to control the possessions, and limit the amount of possessions in a game. But Louisville only giving up 3.4 yards per carry on the ground. They've been getting more pressure on the opposing quarterbacks in recent games as well. It's a tough place to play. I think this is going to be a close game. I don't know if Louisville wins it outright, but wouldn't be surprised to see another game go down to a field goal here for Notre Dame. So give me the points with the Louisville Cardinals at home, and maybe they pull off the big-time upset. Next up, we go to the SEC as Arkansas takes on Ole Miss, another 7:30 Eastern start time. This one's going to be on the SEC Network. Now, in the last couple of seasons, we've seen Arkansas lose a really tough game and a big step-up game, and then they go on a losing streak. Last year was against Texas A&M at a neutral site. It was a 23-21 final score, really close game. Arkansas was 3-0 going into that one. They lost that tough loss, and then they moved on. They lost to Alabama in blowout fashion, and then Mississippi State on the road in blowout fashion. So the year before that, we saw similar things against where we saw Arkansas play at Georgia, a step-up game. They got blown out and then lost the next 2 games. And one was a 52-51 final score. Arkansas goes with these losing streaks in SEC play especially, and I wouldn't want to be on them here. They've lost 3 straight now after losing that game against BYU. They did not look good really on either side of the ball against Texas A&M. I think the final score was closer than what the game actually was. I mean, Arkansas only put up 174 total yards in that game, only 1.1 yards per carry, only 10 first downs. They were outgained 414 to 174, 19 to 10 first down advantage for Texas A&M, and that was with the backup quarterback of Max Johnson. And KJ Jefferson was supposed to be, this was supposed to be some of the best quarterback play, not only in the SEC but in the country, but just hasn't been the case for Arkansas. Ole Miss, we saw what this offense can do, especially at home. I think they score a ton of points in this game. I don't think Arkansas keeps up, so give me Ole Miss laying the points at home. Next up, we see Fresno State, number 24th ranked Fresno State, taking on Wyoming. This one, 8 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be on Fox. Weird things happen in Laramie. We've seen it a few times this season with Wyoming pulling off some nice wins at home. They have a great home field advantage, not just the altitude, but the crowd in itself. I would say it's one of the best home field advantages, not only in the Mountain West, but in similar conferences in college football. And an outright win against Texas Tech at the beginning of the season, a win against Appalachian State, one of the better teams in the Sun Belt year after year. Wyoming should be ready for this game. Fresno State's ranked in the AP polls for good reason. 5-0 overall. They're 1-0 in conference play. They've been really strong on both sides of the football, earning 36 points per game this season, giving up only 17 points per game. Strong defense, especially against the run. Solid secondary as well. The question for me and the concern for me is Fresno State's offense does seem a bit one-dimensional this year, not really running the football too well, only 3.7 yards per carry. And the offensive line's had some questionable games. We saw them give us 6 sacks against Arizona State on the road earlier in the season. So Wyoming's defense, although recently hasn't been great against the run, overall giving up 4 yards per carry, 4.3 yards per carry, not too bad. The secondary's improved, I think, from last year as well, giving up only 57% completion to opposing quarterbacks. They get a good amount of pressure on the opposing QB. The offense has improved. The completion percentage for the quarterback play up about 5% from last year. They're running the ball over 5 yards per carry. Wyoming teams are their best when they trust in that offensive line and the run game. We've seen that this year with Wyoming. I think we're going to see a close game, probably a low-scoring defensive game. I think the points are at a premium. Give me the points with Wyoming. Next up, we see San Jose State taking on Boise State. This one, 8 o'clock Eastern on the CBS Sports Network. San Jose State's coming off a blowout loss to Air Force its last game, and it made sense. Air Force is a really strong team this year on both sides of the ball, and it was a tough travel spot for San Jose State, who went from Toledo back to the West Coast. And now San Jose State's off a bye week, so they're rested here. They've got a really solid offense. I mean, this offensive line was a concern for me going into the season on paper, but it's held up really well this year, and the passing game's been solid. They have an experienced quarterback in Cordero, but the run game has been really strong as well. Just under 5 yards per carry for San Jose State, including 6.8 yards per carry in that last game against Air Force. And the defense for San Jose State, not the best, but neither is Boise State's defense. And I would consider Boise State, the program at least, in the last decade or more than that, more of a defensive program. And even last year, when the Broncos had a disappointing result to their season, they only gave up 293 total yards and 20 points per game. But this year, the defense has plainly not been good, giving up 32 points per game, over 430 yards per game. The secondary has struggled, even the run defense, which we know is Boise State's one of their big strengths. Last year, giving up only 3.5 yards per carry, hasn't been that great this season. I just wouldn't want to lay this many points, even at home for Boise State, who's a really good home team. I wouldn't want to lay this many points against a strong offense on the other side. So give me San Jose State plus the points in this one. And the final game for Saturday's card in college football. And yes, I kept this week's video in chronological order for the games. I saw a comment about that last week. Can you put the games in order, in terms of when they start? This game's going to be at 10 o'clock Eastern start time on the Pac-12 network. Now, Oregon State has been really impressive this year, in my opinion, but more so at Reser. I don't love them when they're on the road. I don't know if I trust DJU to win this game and cover this big number against a Cal team that we got to remember is only a few weeks removed from really hanging in there against Auburn in a game they probably should have won outright, and against an Auburn team that we just saw last week compete down the wire against Georgia, who is number 1 ranked in college football this year. Cal, I think, is flying under the radar right now, really on both sides of the ball. This team's been solid. This is a good offensive line, a good run game, 4.8 yards per carry, solid quarterback play. They're earning 31 points per game and 428 yards per game. The defense, while it hasn't been the best as of late in the secondary, it still has one of the best run defenses in college football, which is important against Oregon State, who loves to run the football. They run it over 36 times per game for over 200 yards per game. But Cal giving up only 3.3 yards per carry. The defensive line's been strong there for Cal. They're home in this game, where the home team has dominated in this series, 9-4 against the spread in the last 13 meetings. And the over is also worth a look in this game because it's 7-2 in the last 9 meetings. I don't trust DJU to make the plays necessary to win this game and cover this big number. So I'm going to take Cal on the spread plus the points, but also a sprinkle on the money line, as I think they could win this game outright. And that's it. Those are the games for Saturday in college football. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your college football picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.